Hey everybody, what up? It is Scuff D here, and today we're going to be talking to ourselves about the Salamander card pool, card by card. So I got my new glasses, I got my haircut, I'm fresh, and I'm ready to go. Let's do this. Alright, I'm even wearing green. Look at that. Not playing at all. Okay, so we're going to go into the cards. We're going to take a look at the Salamanders. Let's take a look at the collection. The Salamanders, so their big thing here is survivability and is sacrifice. Those are their two major mechanics. Sacrifice currently is exclusive to the Salamanders. And I've looked at a couple of the cards already in the Nemetor deck building video that I did. That deck has evolved a little bit since then. Not Nemetor, Numian. Let's not talk about Nemetor until we get to Nemetor. But so today we're going to go through everything in detail. Some cards are better than others, and what are kind of the pitfalls and everything about the Salamanders themselves. So we'll start off with Numian. Numian is a warlord. I think he's one of the strongest, if not the strongest, technically in terms of deck potential and versatility. His ability, he's a 230, but he starts with an extra card, and he actually has Survivor 5, so that actually makes him a 235, if you really think about it. His ability is a 1 energy, and it gives Survivor 1 to a friendly infantry or to Astartes. That does not work on vehicles, that does not work on structures, but that is a strong ability, especially when you take a look at some of the infantry. You take a look at the potential that we're going to see here in terms of keeping things alive, keeping things annoying, building a board. The Salamanders in general are about building board supremacy to really get going, and that's a struggle. His ability helps strongly with that. So, very good warlord. Cashin Vaughn is, I like the flavor of Cashin Vaughn. I think he needs some work. He's got low initiative, so first off, he's got that going against him. He also has Survivor 5, so that technically makes his hit points a 40. His ability, however, is okay. For low initiative, he's got a couple things against him. I think if his ability cost 1 energy, or he had the ability to act again, or both, I think he could be a little bit stronger. He's not bad though, but between the choices, he's not the top level choice in terms of your warlord. Let's talk Nemetor. Now, Nemetor has just recently been changed to receive this update. So now he has a 1 energy. Until your next turn, you gain +2/+0 and deal 2 damage to enemies that attack a friendly troop. So he ups his attack to 4. He can't do anything, but he becomes a wall at 4. So if you go at him, you're going to take 4. Or you go at any of his troops, and most likely that 2 damage is going to ping them off. Very few beefy troops can survive doing damage to a troop as well as taking the 2 damage. I mean, if you think about it, the average hit points is 4, let's say. It's really 3, but let's just say it's 4 for grace, and the average attack is 2 to 3. They're going to have 1 HP, 2 HP remaining, and this is going to kill them. So you're trading one for the other. I don't think this is a good change. You'll notice that he doesn't have Survivor. He's actually one of the few Salamanders that does not have Survivor. And I think it's kind of funny because he didn't survive the drop site massacre. That's why. But his ability, I think his passive needs to be changed. That rather, instead of dealing damage or dealing 2 damage, especially, he gains health, or his attack is a +1. It's not strong, but it's also not offensive at all. It builds a negative play experience in terms of if a Nemetor faces a non-aggressive deck, and even if it faces an aggressive deck, the aggressive deck is just going to do what it does. This doesn't affect tactics. This doesn't affect damage from rally effects. But if you face a non-aggressive deck, you're just going to have each other building up the board and waiting to just destroy everything or see who makes the first mistake. And ultimately, that's a long, boring game. It's not even like a Death Guard, turn by turn Mortarion versus Mortarion game, where it's one advantage over the other. There is no advantage. You're basically just saying, okay, we are going to sit here and not have fun and not play the game. I think this needs to be looked at. I expect to see this ability change 1 to 2 more times in the future, because as it is right now, if you really tried really hard to build Nemetor, and you built like a bunch of frontline troops and you sat them behind and they have to attack the front line, and then they're taking damage for attacking the front line, you're still going to lose. You're going to lose slowly because many of the good decks are dealing with tactics and they're going to use those to deal damage to Nemetor. But even then, what are you doing? What's your end game? What's the point? There's nothing. He doesn't have anything. I don't like it. It's obviously better than it was, because before it was 1 damage to an enemy that attacks a friendly troop, but that doesn't mean it's a good ability. That doesn't mean that it's good for the game, and that doesn't mean that it's actually going to help him in the way that he needs to have help. So I look to see this change in a couple more times, 1 to 2 more times in the future. I don't think it's right where it needs to be, but currently I would rank him the low rung. I'd probably put him as your number 4 worst option as a warlord for Salamanders. If you're playing him, you're going to play a super long game, and I don't know if you'd have fun doing it. Then we've got Vulkan. Vulkan is the Primarch. And as of yesterday, I actually have all the Salamander card pools, so that's 2 legions I have all cards for, which is great. Vulkan is nice. Vulkan is powerful. Vulkan's not perfect just yet. When Vulkan came out, his Reckoning, actually, which we'll take a look at here, his Reckoning, when he triggers his Survivor, so he's got 40 hit points, like any Primarch, but then he also has Survivor 5, so he's actually got 45 hit points, and his Reckoning triggers when he activates his Survivor. His ability is it's not bad. It's pseudo similar to a Fulgrim or a Horus ability in the terms of putting a card in your hand for 2 energy. He's got medium initiative, which isn't bad. The problem is he's creating a teaching card in your hand. So unlike Fulgrim, who can generate any Emperor's Children tactic, which can range from, Pride of the Emperor to junk, Vulkan is going to create only a select few Salamander tactics, none of which deal damage, whereas the Emperor's Children have 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5, at least 4 that deal damage. And none of his actually do, and he doesn't change the cost of them, which I would like to see that change. I would like to see him create a teaching card with a reduced cost, but the point is, we'll take a look at the teachings as we see. They're not bad cards. They're not bad cards, but basically you're paying 2 energy to get a card to play for another 2 to 3 energy, depending on what it is. That isn't going to give you an offensive advantage. It's more of a defensive or a reactive advantage. So it could use some work, if you ask me. But his Reckoning, let's go down to that. Let's take a look at that. So this triggers when he hits Survivor. What? Oh, I'm not looking at all the cards. Notice that it hasn't changed anything. It's just going to show me his whispers now. But his Reckoning triggers, and Vulkan is restored, and it goes into his hand, and it costs after Vulkan triggers Survivor. What it does is, number 1, it gives him some HP, and it ups his attack to 3, like any Reckoning, except for Korax at the moment. And then it gives him Survivor. It gives him an additional Survivor 3, I believe, at this present time. When he first came out in an event, this gave him Survivor 6. So he had Survivor 5, and then he had a constant Survivor 6, because this gets used over and over again. So the thing with Vulkan is, you don't need to, but late game, if you've got him beefed up and you've got some healing and some potential, he just goes to face pound to pound, swinging hammers, dealing massive damage, and recovering. And your opponent then not only has to deal the 3 to 5 to kill him, but they also have to deal an additional 3 to 5 to drop him after with his survivor. Otherwise, you're just going to do it all over again on your turn. So his potential to stay on the board is long. When he came out, it was Survivor 6, and it was in an event, and everybody wanted to play Vulkan because every time you get the chance to play Primarch, why wouldn't you? So that led to a lot of long mirror games where ultimately nobody ended up with advantages. I mean, we're talking 10, 15-minute games. Some people just gave up for it, or they decked out is basically how they lost. So the game developers chose to change that down. I don't think it... I think he's okay. He's good. Don't get me wrong. He's good. I think there's some room for improvement in Vulkan still, just the same. So as far as the Salamander Primarchs go, I would actually rank, in my opinion, and some others would have different opinions, but I would rank Numian as your number one. As your number one best in terms of potential, what he can do. You've got to play with him right, but he's really good. He is. Vulkan as your number two, and it's just a close number two. It's not, I mean, he plays a totally different style than Numian, but he's a very close number two. It just depends on what you want to do with your deck, and then cash in Nemetor at the bottom in terms of your top two selections and your bottom two selections. So let's take a look at the rest of the cards. So Devotion, right off the bat, this is a teaching. This is one card that can be generated by Vulkan's ability. It's a 1 energy. It's very basic. It gives a +1/+1 to a friendly troop. It's not something that I would put in my deck. It's a common. It's a 1 energy. There's a lot of other effects that add additional benefits to more than one troop. Especially if I'm doing Vulkan. If I have a Vulkan deck, I don't put any of the devotions, any of the teachings in it, because he's going to generate them. While they're nice, I don't rely on them. I rely on his ability to generate them, so I don't want to saturate my deck with cards that I can just magically create regardless. Sorkar Hunters, now they've got Survivor 1. They also have 1 hit, 1 health. So this means that 2 actions have got to be done to deal with them. But that 1 health means that they don't even have to be really good actions. You could have a little, one of those little cheap 1-drop Tech Priest guys deal a damage and then throw a frag grenade, and that costs you 2 energy to get rid of this guy, and he doesn't do anything otherwise. If you're new and you need some troops to fill space, they're okay, but I would choose others. So Benevolence. This is one of my... I mean, they're all good teachings, but I like this teaching, especially with Vulkan. Heal 3 to your Warlord and adjacent troops. That's just strong. For 3, for 2 energy, you're getting potentially 9 health restored. That's pretty good. I like that. If you have a deck where you are looking to do healing, or you're looking to do Nemetor, I guess. I mean, if you really want to beat yourself in the face with a sock with a rock in it. Benevolence is a good card, don't get me wrong. Just don't do Nemetor right now. Just don't do it. Don't even think about it. Benevolence is a good card. It's good. Cortan Squad. Now here's the first one with Sacrifice. So Sacrifice is, it triggers when killed while attacking, even if saved by a survivor. Now that's important, as we'll see with some cards later on. But the thing to keep in mind here is Sacrifice. Sacrifice is kind of like an offensive Backlash, even though Backlash works when you're both killed while attacking and defending. Backlash is technically superior to Sacrifice. However, Sacrifice abilities are much stronger than most Backlash abilities, except for the higher rarity levels, and even then, the ability to recur them with some Survivor built into these cards makes them much better. So he's a 3/1. He doesn't have Survivor. His sacrifices, he deals 2 damage to a random enemy. You know, that sacrifice is going to make him a target, but the fact that he has 1 energy means that he's easily handled by anything. Is a good starter. I think that he's easily replaced as time goes on. I wouldn't include him if you have better options. If you're looking to do more, there's better cards, as we'll see, but it's not a bad card. Harmoken Squad is not bad either. They've got a 1/3, so low health and low attack, But for 2 energy, they've got Survivor, so it's going to take 2 to 3, depending on what attacks that they've got, to get rid of these guys. And they've got a very cheap ability, 1 energy, to deal 1 damage to an enemy and adjacent units. These are nice to stack with Cashin. They're nice to stack with playing Ashen Bones later on, just for the fact that you can just damage and destroy anything for basically 4 energy. That's not too shabby, and you're also doing some additional splash damage. So Flamers, feel the burn. That's what the Salamanders do. You're gonna feel it. Hope is probably one of my favorite teachings. It's your troops gain, sacrifice, draw a card. Now, it's important to note that these teachings, especially the like Hope, this affects all your troops, and it doesn't go away. And if you've got Survivor on some of those troops, it stays with them. So every time you're sacrificing them and you're using their Survivor, you're getting a card. If you've got 2 to 3 troops on the board and you play this, it's a great way for the Salamanders to replenish their deck. And yes, it doesn't trigger if your opponent kills them on your turn. It kind of forces the issue, but if you've built up the board supremacy, it makes it hard for them to do. And on top of that, you've replenished your hand at least by 1 wave, and getting those 2 to 3 cards in addition to additional Survivor effects or sacrifice effects. Very big, very good swing. You could put 2 of it in a deck. I prefer 1 of to 2, depending on what I'm trying to do with the deck, but it's a very good card. You'll notice that the Salamanders, as we see, don't have a whole lot of card draw, so it is good for that to throw onto troops. Orbital combat, I like the ability. This is one of the first abilities that we saw where enemy tactic cost was affected. I think it can do more. I think it needs to do more still. It's an epic, and it's for 2, and it makes your opponent's tactics 3 more until the next turn. That's it. So if you throw this out there and your opponent doesn't play any tactics, or they don't have any tactics, you've done nothing to them. Yeah, you've only lost 2 energy, but maybe it could do a little bit more. I like to see this do some damage if that's potential, whether it's across the board damage or something. These Salamanders in general severely lack damage tactics, so they could use something to go with that. But this is a very good meta card if you're going into a matchup against tactic heavy Angron, tactic heavy Tarek. You throw this out there, and that's really going to hurt them. It's really going to jack up their thing. 3 cost. I mean, that just makes most tactics unplayable the following turn. Promethean Gift. Now, this is one where you've got to choose where it's going into a deck. I think it could be better, but it's not terrible. It's a rare. For 2 energy, you're reducing the cost of troops' abilities by 1. That's just for that turn, actually. Unless they've changed it, I've noticed in use, it only makes it count for that turn only. So you need to have several troops out, or, as we'll see, 1 particular troop that can use their ability multiple times, and then in order to get your value worth. Because otherwise, if you're paying 2 to save 1, you're still paying 1 more. So you've got to time it right. You don't just throw this out there if you've only got 1 troop ability. But if you've got 2 to 3 troops with flamers ready to go, and you throw it out there, now you're saving money. Now you're cooking with gas. Now you're ready to light the fires and get that burn going. It's good, but you've got to build your deck with enough cards to properly utilize it, and you got to play it at the right time. Roshan Squad, I think this is one of the better starting cards for Salamander in terms of dropping it as a 2. Right off the bat is a 2/2. Nothing super special, but it's got Survivor 1. So now it's going to take 2 actions to get rid of this card, besides a straight destruction card. And I do need to clarify, if something destroys a troop, it will destroy a card with the Survivor. Survivor doesn't save it from that. Survivor simply saves it from damage. So that's important to note. If you didn't know that by now, keep that in mind. But their sacrifice ability is so good. Deal 3 damage to the enemy warlord. So if you get these guys out, and even if you drop them out turn 2, your opponent's going to be smart. They're going to throw down, they're going to attack him with their warlord, and they're going to take 2. And If they don't have something else to follow up and deal that 1 additional damage once the survivor triggers, then the next turn they're going to take another 2 plus 3. So from this little 2, you have the potential to do, just in that instance, 2 plus 2 plus 3 is 7 for 2. That's it. And half of that is on their turn. If they can't get to him right away, or they don't get to him right away, then you can make that 2 plus 3 plus another 2 plus 3 is 10 for 2. That's good math. Now, that's not realistic. Typically, they become a target for a very good reason, but they're good. They're good to have. Get these guys. Sorrow's not a bad teaching. It's not terrible. It's not great. It gives Survivor 1 to a friendly troop, and you get to draw a card. That's it. But that can be any troop. This was changed. I think initially it was like a salamander or infantry. It was kind of very specific. This has been changed. So now you can give it to a structure. You can give it to a vehicle. You can give it to you can give it to the trap. You can give it to shield generator. You can give it to Doombringer. You can give it to any of these salamander vehicles that you're going to see. And then in addition to that, you get to draw a card. So it replaces itself and it puts an ability. It's not bad, and it's a good common. Storm Eagle is the only damage tactic that the salamanders have. It's not shabby. It deals 2 damage to any unit, and it stuns it. So that can be their warlord, that can be their troop, and you're going to need that, especially if you're doing like a deck with Numian, where you're triggering Survivor, or Vulkan, where you want to build that board and you want to, hit the right things and choose what you're hitting. Stunning anything is nice, number 1. Dealing that 2 damage is good, don't get me wrong, but they've got Scorched Earth, and that's it. There's two tactics, and Scorched Earth is... We'll get to it. It's not bad, but Storm Eagle is superior, if you ask me, and it's cheaper. It's only 2 energy. That's a good pinch. That's a good pinch card. So Antitar Squad. These guys are targets, hard and fast for a good reason. Look at that ability. Sacrifice, destroy a random enemy troop. Now, their health of 4 is very interesting with the sacrifice, because typically health of 3 makes sacrifice easy. Health of 4 makes it kind of difficult unless your opponent has high attack cards on the table. And if they do, and you play this properly, you can, number 1, probably kill that high attack troop between Antitar's attack and maybe a second followed attack or a tactic. And then his sacrifice ability will destroy a second troop. Or if that's the only troop on there, then just throw Antitar out and you get rid of it. You throw Numian Survivor on this, and you now have a constant thing on the board that is a threat to destroy anything at any given time just by attacking, because once you trigger that Survivor 1, now he has 1 health. He's much easier to do it over and over and over again. So that 4 health is initial, but hard to get over, and he is a target. But he's a good card. I think as just a straight destroy card, every deck for Salamander should have 2 of these guys. They're a 3-drop. They're not terrible. Yes, they're targets, but if you get them out there and you can protect them a turn, they're going to buy you the turn that you need. They're going to do what you want them to do. Artificer Armor is neat. It's neat. I've seen it in the event decks. It's been in some event decks, and the potential to really abuse it is up there. I note that this is a tactic. This is not a teaching. This is a tactic. So you can't get this with Vulkan. For 3 energy, you can double the current health of a troop. And there are some healthy troops that we have in the game. And this goes with any troop. Vehicle, shielded troop, neutral, it doesn't matter. If you've got yourself a dragon-scaled Ogren bodyguard, and then you artificer armor him, I mean, we're talking double-digit health. That's pretty crazy for 3. The problem with that being, of course, is destruction cards just deal with it. Doesn't matter what the health is. You may want to use that if you are not doing a sacrifice deck necessarily, where health is, you don't want to add too much health, because too much health makes it hard to trigger sacrifice. It's useful on the offensive if you've got something that you want to survive, but it's not for every deck. It's not for every Salamanders deck. So Ashen Bones, this right here this is their destruction card. And the only contingent, it's a 3 cost, the only contingent is it has to be a damaged enemy troop. So there does have to be a damage on it. However, with Cashin's ability, that's easily obtained. And so that 3 becomes a 5 destroy, and you're dealing 1 damage across the board. Or you've got these guys here for the 1 and the 3, or any of the other Salamander troops that do splash damage, and then 3, and you can take out whatever you want to take out. As most destruction cards go, I suggest at least 1 of in most decks if possible. It's a common, but it's a really good clutch card to have. So Chaplain Xavier, this guy was improved, and significantly so, very much so. I think originally he had 3/2 health, and he just had his rally as a give survivor 1 to adjacent troops, and that was it. Now he's a 3/3, and his sacrifice drives his use like skyrocket up. Sacrifice, return to your hand, and that's easy to do. Now, once your opponent catches on, they'll try to get rid of Xavier to keep him from recurring the battle, but if you've got him behind some of these Salamander frontline troops, then he can run out there again, kill himself, get him up in your hand, throw him back down, build up survivor on some more troops, and he is just like keeping guys in the spirit, in the fighting spirit, keeping them alive, really being an annoyance. And if you've got him with some sacrifice cards on the table, he's furthering the sacrifice capabilities of those troops. I would probably say his value, it skyrocketed so much in utility and usefulness that I would probably, outside of Vulkan, I'd probably rank him as the #1 must-have legendary for Salamanders. The hammers are good, as you'll see, but in terms of utility, in terms of use, he can go in every deck, and he's going to be useful every time you play him. You got to play him next to a troop. Don't just throw him out there. That's a waste of a card. Don't wait till you've got troops on the board. But just a good card. So save up for him. Go for him first. Now, Icon Cargo is not bad. He's a 3/3. His ability is rally. If you control infantry troops, gain front line and +1/+1. You have to build your deck, and you have to look at the cards in your deck, because infantry troops does not mean Astartes. It does not mean Salamanders cards. Basically, you have to have a deck that has a decent mix or a certain ratio of Imperial or Mechanicum or Chaos infantry troops in your deck, and then you've got to have them on the board to go with it. So it's a good way to get front line for 4/4. However, it's contingent on having another card, which is a little different than the Death Guard's similar card, who requires no troops on the board. He requires a specific type of troop on the board. So he's harder to play, but his potential's there. He doesn't have sacrifice, he doesn't have survivor, but if you're looking to go for some frontline fun, he's not a bad way to go. He's a decent starting card for Salamanders. As time goes on, you might find better options. Now, Jur Squad, these guys here, they're a little bit higher cost than the first Flamer Squad. However, 1 extra health, same cost for the ability, except now you're dealing 2 damage to an enemy and adjacent units. These guys don't have survivor. They become quick, fast targets, but if you can protect them, or if they can survive 1 extra turn, that's 2 to 6 damage across 3 units. And that's not bad for 1 energy. That's actually a really good cost reduction for the ability. Now, Nocturne Born, this is also a tactic. This isn't a teaching, but this card has improved. I think it can be better still, but it is not bad. It gives survivor 1 to a friendly unit, and if your opponent controls more troops, return it to your hand. So its use goes up because you can use it multiple times. And you can use it on your warlord. Friendly unit means your warlord or a troop, but if you can put it on your warlord, that's nice. The problem is you're only getting return value on it if your opponent controls more troops, which means you're at a disadvantage. You can play it. Let's say if they've got their warlord and a troop out, you could play Nocturne Born, get it back in your hand, throw down a troop, and now you've tied the tables. You want to time your play with it better. It's not terrible though. I think I've used it one time to get like Survivor up to 10, just by constantly using it before I drop troops for like 10 turns. It was stupid, and it didn't win me the game, but it made the game long, and it made it interesting, and it was always in my hand, so it's not a bad card. It's pretty good. It's pretty good, but you've got to keep it in mind as far as when you play it and how you play it. Don't bank on playing it, because like I said, you're putting yourself in a off balance position, and that really isn't where the Salamanders want to be. They do not want to be outside of board control. They want to have that board control. Resilience, it's not a bad teaching. Now this is created by Vulkan. They have the ability to you give your troops sacrifice, return to your hand. That's not bad, but I would prefer to draw cards than get troops back into my hand, especially with if they have Survivor on them. You're not going to utilize the Survivor. It's going to trigger, and they're going to go to your hand, and the Survivor means nothing. So you want to watch when you play it. Don't play it on troops that have, it's going to go across the board. So if all your stuff on the board has Survivor, that means when they die when attacking, they're not going to stick. And that's not something you necessarily want. Early on, when the Salamanders came out, this card, and actually all of the cards that added sacrifice mechanics to the troops, were not coded to go away when they return to your hand. Like most cards that are returned to hand lose all the bonuses and buffs. That didn't apply to these teachings initially, and that was a big issue. That was a big problem, because you saw cards that had gained Survivor 1, draw a card, when it sacrifice returned to your hand. Like, it just became, you had super cards, and people were just, it was too much. I don't think we need to go that far again. I think we can go a little bit further with what it gives. This is the potential to get some cards to your hand, or like if you want to have a recurring Goldstone, go for it. Throw down a Goldstone, hit Resilience, kill the Goldstone, he comes back to your hand, throw down the Goldstone again, and use him one more time. It's not a bad idea, but it's not for every deck. It's not for every play. So ATAC, Epidemi, now we're starting to see some decent frontline stuff. First off, he's got frontline. There's no contingency there. He's a 4 cost, but he's got 4 health, and he's got Survivor 2. That's pretty beefy when you think about it. Now he's at turn 4, so you're close to that destroy card range, and you can start seeing some cards that can do 4 damage or 5 damage, and then your opponent's warlord can follow up to get rid of that Survivor, but it still takes at least 2 actions to get rid of this guy. That's a strong front line. That's a strong thing to sit behind for the warlords to do what they want to do, for the Salamander troops to keep their sacrifice going. So he's a good card. Good card. Applause. Dragon Scale Shield is interesting. I like it. I like the flavor of it. It gives frontline, it gives shield, and it gives +2 health to a friendly troop. That's not bad. That protects you with frontline, that protects them with shield, and it gives them more health. And then you can add artificial armor on top of it if you really just want to get stupid, and then ramp that up even more from whatever their current health is. It doesn't work on your warlord, and it's a 4 cost, so it's not huge in terms of like utility. You're not going to use it every game. You're going to want troops on the board for that 4 energy for the most part, so it's kind of a late game lock and hold, but it's a decent tactic. So the Epistolary Rastan, this guy is good. You want to have 2 of these probably in most of your decks. He's a 2/3. He's got a 4 drop, but he's got Survivor 3. That's actually one of the higher survivors especially in this range. There's a couple more that beat him out in the higher cost range, but He comes in at full health. He survives at full health, and his sacrifice deals 2 damage to all enemies. He basically just, throws a giant grenade down, as he goes out, and then comes back and then throws some more grenades down. These guys are easy targets. They're hard targets, but they're also targets, and it takes 2 to 3 cards to deal with them if they're not destroyed outright. The 3 health is tricky because it makes it slightly harder. You can't just throw them at your opponent's warlord to trigger the sacrifice, but it's not hard to trigger the sacrifice with them. Now, Gardos, I like this. It's a vehicle, so it is susceptible to things that affect vehicles like Direct Rask. However, it has Survivor 2, which is nice. And for 2 energy, it deals 2 damage to all enemies. That's a solid ability. That's a really good ability. It's only a 3/3, but you're not going to use it to attack. You're not going to use it, offensively unless, you see the end of times approaching. That 3 is more or less just to defend. That 2 damage to all enemies is just huge. If you guys can keep a Gardos around for like 1 turn, you see return value on it. Kogoski Squad, these guys are, I don't like them as much as I like Eigen Gargo. They're the same cost. Well, actually, no, he's a 3. These guys are 4. They're a 4/4. And they can become a 5/5 if there's friendly Imperial Army troops. Now, not only does it have to be not Salamander, now it has to be Imperial Army. Not just an infantry, just an Imperial Army, which can include structures, can include, vehicles. But it just gives them +1/+1. It doesn't give them front line. It doesn't give them anything else. So I don't like that as much, because if I have flimsy Imperial Army troops, I'd like to keep them around depending on what they are. What's the point of having a 5/5 if he can't protect the 1/3 or the 2/4, that's doing something useful for me. Jubok Mechanicum. Drawing a blank all of a sudden. What's his name? What is his name? Is it Jubok? It is Jubok. I'm thinking Melgator for some reason. Yeah, Jubok. You want to keep him around. You want front line. I'd rather have this guy follow him up. I don't know. He's okay. But I'd probably switch him out for a Gardos or an Epistolary Restan, if you ask me. So, Scorched Earth, this is the second of 2 for the Salamanders in terms of direct damage tactic. Deals 2 damage to all units for 4. And that's all units. That includes your units, which is not always a bad thing, because for those like Epistolary Restan or Antitar, it actually gives you potential to drop their health low enough so that you can attack with them and trigger their sacrifice. But it can be a double-edged sword. Late game, it's not as useful, because late game you don't want to kill your stuff, or you don't want to drop your warlord's health any. So it's not as useful as you would like it, say, around turn 5 or turn 6. But it's not bad. It's not bad, but 2 damage and a second 2 damage tactic is all they've got. Yes, they have a lot of abilities that deal damage, a lot of pay energy damage. The one thing that the Salamanders are really lacking is any sort of offensive rally effects. They've got some strong effects. They've got some decent rally effects. Xavier probably being one of the top rally effects that they have. But they don't have anything offensive in terms of buffing, in terms of dealing damage, in terms of, destroying anything. You've got to keep your stuff on the board for a turn, and then you've got to attack for a turn. They don't have flank. They don't have fast. So they'll never be up to that speed. They're going to be plodding along, and you got to time your stuff right with them. So it does kind of hurt that they don't have a card that deals 4 damage. It does. but they have a lot of it built into their troops. A Salamander's deck can easily be very low tactic decked, and you can have, ample abilities on the table. The problem is then you have to have your troops survive for that turn to use the abilities. It's not difficult. Many of them have survivor, but it can be a challenge, and it can be frustrating when it doesn't happen. Now, Barrack Zytos, when he first came out, his ability was actually sacrifice, stun all enemy units. And that was quickly changed. Because that's just too strong of an ability. If you're able to juggle him one time, you officially can lock your opponent's board the rest of the game. And that's not fun. That's not fair. So it's now stun a random enemy. However, if your opponent only has their warlord out, it's not so random. You know exactly who you're stunning every time, and then you can keep a warlord like Angron locked in stasis, especially if you've got Numian giving this guy survivor. He sacrifices, give him survivor again the next turn, unless they've got something that can do 2 attacks, because Angron's stunned, he can't do nothing. It's going to keep happening over and over again. A Zytos lock is kind of, I wouldn't say the end game of Numian. It's kind of a strong game for Numian. It's a good game. It's a good turn saver for a cash-in and for Vulkan too. Dellar Squad is just kind of your run-of-the-mill average 5 energy. They do have survivor too, but they've got 3 health. That 5 attack is a target, and they're very easy to deal with. Two basic cards can handle them in terms of dealing a 3 attack and a 2 attack. So they're okay. I would promptly replace these guys with something else if you could. Something like this guy, Nimron Phalanx. First off, 4/4, okay. Alright, that's good. Survivor 1, okay. Alright, that's good. Sacrifice, heal 3 to your other units. Okay, that's very good. I like that. These guys, like most of the strong sacrifice troops, are targets. But that ability, you only have to use that ability once, and you can feel the repercussions. You can trigger that, heal guys that you've already sacrificed or that have attacked, and heal your warlord, and then do them again. These are very good troops. They're a 5 cost, so they are costly. Abandoned Supplies makes a great card in a Salamander's deck, because a lot of these high cost cards, that cost reduction is so critical. If you can bring out Nylon Phylax on turn 3 or turn 4 instead of turn 5 or later, that's not bad. You might actually get his benefit off multiple times. So Volker Squad, they're very basic. They're a 3/4. They've got a 5 for a cost. That's kind of heavy. But look at that ability. Deal 2 to deal 4 damage. 4 damage to a warlord, to a troop, to a vehicle, doesn't matter. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good exchange rate. And they've got Survivor 1. So again, at least 2 actions to get rid of these guys, dealing 4 damage. That's not too shabby for a 2 energy cost. Ancient Dackler. Now this guy's got Relentless, which is interesting. And he's Relentless as he gains Survivor. And he starts with Survivor 2. And he's a 5/5. But he's a vehicle. So crack grenade, and then throw a little 2-chump troop, and they just dealt with this 6 legendary card. It's not bad. It's not bad, but it's not great. It's not great. It could be better. I do like the fact that he can continuously gain Survivor. And if he survives just 1 turn, now he has Survivor 3. Now, interesting thing to clarify with Survivor, and I should have mentioned it earlier, you can put Survivor 10 on something. But when they die, they're only ever going to gain maximum hit points to what their starting hit points were. So let's say Dellar Squad has Survivor 2, and you give it an additional Survivor 2, so now it has Survivor 4. When it dies, it's only going to come back with 3 hit points. He can get up to 5. He could go much, much higher, but if you get rid of him, he's only going to come back with 5 health. So that's something to keep in mind. How did I do it with my Warlord, you ask? Well, Warlords have a starting hit points of 30, so, I mean, you could go higher than that, I guess, and then they would come back at full hit points. that's ridiculous. But I don't know what kind of game you're playing. Captain Eusebius. Now, this is a little trickier because he's a 5/5, which is nice. That's a good thing to have, especially in a 6-drop troop. But he's got a sacrifice ability, and that makes it hard to use that sacrifice ability, actually. And that's where something like Scorched Earth does come into play. Maybe drop his health to 3 so that you can easily trigger his sacrifice ability. But that sacrifice ability is, wow. It only needs to go off one time, and then your opponent's like, what? What happened? What did I witness? If you got 3 or 4 troops on the board, and you just give them all +2/+2, and you're dealing 5 damage to something on top of that, good luck. Now, the problem with that is depending on what you've got on there, like if you're giving +2/+2 to other troops that you want to use the Survivor with, that's tricky. So keep an eye on how you want to time it, or their sacrifice, rather, because you might want to sacrifice a troop and then sacrifice Eusebius and buff them again for the following turn. Because otherwise, if he buffs them up, then they can attack, but their sacrifice won't trigger because they'll survive the attack. So keep that in mind. He's a good card. I don't know if he's a 2-of. He might be in some decks, but I think a 1-of is not a bad card, especially for a 6-drop. Now, the Zaith Pyroclasts, these guys are good. These guys are strong. They're a 3. They're a 5 health. They've got Survivor 1. That's pretty beefy. That's 2 to 3 cards, maybe even 4 cards to take these guys out, aside from like returning with a Melgator or a Destruction card. And their ability, deal 2 damage for 2 energy to an enemy and adjacent units. And if any dies, you can act again. So you get these guys out turn 6. Turn 7, you could technically use his ability 3 times. You wouldn't be able to put any other cards out. But if you deal 2/2/2 and one of those dies, then you can deal 2/2/2 again, and another one dies, and then 2/2/2. Now that's saying your opponent had a board full of troops. They might just have 2 troops, but that's 4 damage. That's 2 for 2 for 2 for 2. It's a fair exchange, and you are maintaining that board supremacy. So a very good card. And again, going back up to Promethean Gift, if you're able to use Promethean Gift with these guys, now instead of paying the 2, now you're saving money. Now you're doing it. You're paying 1 to deal 2, and then you could use that ability. Let's say turn 7, you pay this out, it drops it to, so now you've got 5 energy. Instead of using their ability 3 times, you can use their ability 5 times in turn 7. That's banking on your opponent having a full board and killing 5 things each time, but I don't know, that's 10 damage for 5 energy. I'll take that. That's good. Okay. So Fire Drakes have been improved. They before they didn't have this battle honor, gain Survivor 2. They had a pay 2 energy to gain Survivor 2, and then they didn't act again. So you put out this 6/5, and then they didn't do anything. You just upped their Survivor. So they changed that to give them battle honor, and that's actually really good. They are a higher cost card. However, they've got Survivor 3, and they can gain Survivor 2, and if you're attacking the right things at the right point in time, you can actually basically have these guys come right back out with 5 health after they've killed something. So, they're good. Are they a closer? Maybe not. But they're not bad to have. You should feel good if you've got one of those. Now, these guys here, the Salamanders vehicle, this is a good ability. You'll notice that it does not have Survivor, and that makes it very fragile. As a 6 health, it's susceptible, just about to crack grenade. Obviously, melt a bomb, and then you throw a troop at it, and it's gone. And for 7 energy, you're getting in that range of, are you going to be able to use this troop or not? If you can, that's really good, because now you're dealing 4 damage to an enemy and adjacent units. That's some heavy firepower. Actually, just heavy fire at that point. I mean, you're just throwing napalm on people. Urdrakul is one of Vulkan's hammers. Its ability gives a warlord the ability to destroy any troop attacked, and that sticks for the rest of the game. And on Vulkan, who can be perpetual and constantly recur and return to battle, That is a huge advantage. It doesn't matter what they throw out there. He can attack it, destroy it. If it drops him below his survivor triggers, he throws his reckoning out, and he's back up to full health, and whatever big, beefy, nasty thing that they had is gone. Really good card. Really good card. Ancient Xavier, he's okay. He's not bad. He's got Survivor 3, and he has +3/+0 while your opponent has more troops, but he's an 8 cost. And he's a 6/6 for 8. That's not so good. And at best, he's going to be a 9/6. His health doesn't go up. I think he has room to be looked at again and to be revised. I would like to see him as a 7/7 or even gain +2/+2 while your opponent has more troops. Again, with the Salamanders, you don't want to be in a position where your opponent has more troops than you. And if it's turn 8 and you're dropping this guy out, that's all you're doing. That's not a good position to be in. Then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he has +3/+0, because he still only has 6 health. And for epic rarity, it's not very good. It can be better. So, yeah, it's okay. Arcan, again, here we are with a 6/6 for an 8. This guy has shield, and this guy has survivor 2. That's it. No other ability. But he can deal 6 damage. And then he has the potential to deal 6 damage again and again with the survivor. If you are new and you don't have too many cards and you're looking for a decent closer, you could consider Arcan. I would look elsewhere if you could. I think the Mechanicum and even the Imperials have better 8 cost closing cards than this. However, the durability of the card is pretty good. Dawnbringer is the second in the hammer set for Vulkan. If you've got both of these on Vulkan, he becomes a +4 with cleave 2 and destroying anything that he attacks. And then if you have his reckoning triggered, he then becomes a 5 attack warlord with cleave 2 and destroying anything that he attacks. And that's big. Now that's a 9 cost epic. That's a good card though. For 9, you're getting a solid return. If you've got abandoned supplies, you can get it for a 7. If you've got Forge Father Tekel, you can actually get it for 4. The problem with Forge Father Tekel is, while he finally has an 8/8 stat to represent his 9 ability, and he has Survivor 5, and that's really cool. His ability is doesn't let him use again. So let's take a look at this. 0 energy. It's free. Draw a tactic from your deck. Tactic. Hammers are tactics. Hammers are tactics. Reduce its cost by 5. The 9 becomes a 4. The 7 becomes a 2. And then this is saying you haven't gotten them already. The problem is he's not creating. He's drawing it from your deck. And he's a 9. So turn 9 or 10, all you're doing is putting him on the table. And if your opponent bounces him or destroys him, it did nothing for you. If this was a rally effect, that would be better. Rally effect would be better. Just as a 1 rally, just to give you 1 weapon, 1 tactic. Number 1. Number 2, the second turn, now you have to use his ability, and he doesn't do anything. He's not frontline. He doesn't do anything. He just gets you attacked. Now, granted, if you already had the hammers out there, you don't need to use his ability. You've got an 8/8 troop. That's great. That's fantastic. But it doesn't quite imply his full usefulness. Now, he could, straight for 0, get you a Scorched Earth for free. He could get you a Nocturne Born for free. Dragon Scale Shield for free. So he's got his uses. If you throw a Dragon Scale Shield on this guy for free, and then throw Artificer Armor on him, just do it. Just be silly. Just be silly. That's 20 health on Forge Father Tekel. He's like a mini warlord at that point. That's stupid. But the cost and the timing is really what I mean, I picked him up at the shop yesterday because I wanted to complete the collection for the Salamanders and just be done with them. I don't know if I'm going to use him just yet. I want to see that ability be a rally ability, and then he'll be perfect. Then he'll be worth it. Right now, his return value compared to most of the other 9-drops is not as strong. 9-drop legendaries. For instance, let's take Forge Father to Kill. And, I mean, your perfect example is this guy here for the Raven Guard, who has an immediate effect. This is effects to the table on the board and everything that you've got. Cade's next. Let's take a look at the Sons of Horus. The Punisher is probably worse than he is, but it deals 10 damage for 4 energy, rather than giving you a tactic to play for a reduced cost. Just 10 damage, that's going to end the game. Let's take a look at Macer, who's a 7. Now that's 2 less, but he's got a game +2/+2, so he actually has offensive potential. Let's take a look at Eidolon. Now, actually, let's just look at the Subjugator Titan. Let's look at that shit. Let's look at that. That's just ridiculous. I mean, for 1 cost more. So his potential is there. He's not bad, but I wouldn't put him in a deck if you're not banking on using that ability. And even then, if you draw the hammers before you draw Forge Father to Kill, then he's worthless. Or he's not worthless. He's an 8/8, but that's too clunky. That's too heavy. The last thing you would want in your hand at turn 9 is to have Dawnbringer and Forge Father to Kill in your hand. That's the last thing you would want. Abraxas. I think this is a solid effect. Here we are. Let's take a look now. This is a 10. This is compared to the Punisher for the Sons of Horus, which we just looked at, which was a 9. Abraxas is a 10. For 1 less, it deals 8 damage. However, it has higher attack and it has shield. And it's an epic. This might be one of a few that we've looked at so far for Salamanders that actually is superior to other Legion cards. Okay, alright. Now, it can still be dealt with by a Melt-A-Bomb or by a Destruction card, but shield, okay, 8 damage is almost as good as 10, and it's at turn 10 plus, that's going to end things. So, not bad. I like Abraxas more than I like Forge Father to Kill, and I don't want to. I want to like Forge Father to Kill more than Abraxas. Come on, give it. Anyways, that's it for the Salamanders. So the Salamanders are their big susceptibility at this current point in time of the game is speed. They lack speed. They lack rally effects. Rally effects that deal damage. They need to rely on the neutral cards in order to get those effects. Whether that's Doombringer as an end of turn effect, or it is your Goldstone Hunters for their fastness, or it's defensive satellites or artillery strike for immediate effect. It's nice if you can get these troops to stick and then have consistent burn damage applied. But it's hard to do that. It's not impossible. It certainly isn't impossible. They've got some beefy health on there, and the Survivor does make it potential. Numian and Vulkan certainly have the potential to really stick things around. Trust me on that. Because Vulkan, do not be afraid to attack with Vulkan. That's your end game anyways, is to have Vulkan attacking. But if they can't get that mid-game, late-game board supremacy, it's not a good position for the Salamanders to be in. And the game right now favors that. Now, the Iron Warriors are about to hit the game in 2 days, 2-3 days, depending on when they actually time this release. And they are shaping up to be very similar to the Salamanders in terms of relying on troops and troops with abilities and building up board presence. So it might actually be beneficial for the Salamanders in the long run to counter that in terms of, okay, you're going to throw down troops, I'm going to throw down troops. Who's going to get it first? Who's going to stay alive longer? I've got guys with Survivor. What have you got? We don't know what they've got, but that's a good shift away from this the aggro, face, tactic, I win. Nemetor needs to improve. He's not there to compete on that level at all, if you ask me. But Cash and Vaughn, Vulcan, Numian, and some of the cards that we've looked at are there. Not all the cards. They can be frustrating to play if you don't build your deck right. You have to work at it. But they're fun when they do play right the way you want them to, because utilizing those sacrifice abilities, keeping your troops alive in Survivor, and watching your opponent kill one troop of theirs, two troops of theirs to get rid of one of yours, that's a good exchange. You want that attrition. It's a different kind of attrition in the game, but if they don't keep their hand actively stocked or their table actively supplied with troops, you will gain the advantage just by having your guys remain out there. The banes of them are your destruction cards, well-timed and lucky defensive satellites, and then just your splash damage effects that can hit multiple cards all at once. That's every game that you're not going to get. I mean, that's every game. Every deck has got that weakness, so that's not a terrible thing to have. But it is frustrating if you can't get that edge early on. So keep that in mind. Take a look at the cards that you're putting together, see how they gel, and have fun with it. Feel the burn, because the Salamanders, they do have potential. I think, in terms of the Istvan 5 expansion, which was Iron Hands, Salamanders, and Raven Guard, which we will look at next, I think the Salamanders have ranked number 2, below the Raven Guard, who came out strong, are still good, not as top as they are after some nerfs, but I think the Iron Hands are below the Salamanders. I think Iron Hands have got some strong abilities, but I think the Salamanders have got the durability that the Iron Hands wish that they had. So, not bad. It's a good Legion. They've got a good ethos, and I think they can be fun to play. I've had fun playing with them. I've had fun playing with all the Legions. I'll be honest with you. I've had fun playing with all Legions. I can't say that and not make that a disclaimer. But they are not for people who want to feel like they're behind. You will feel like you're behind at first, and then you won't. If you're feeling like you're behind all game, then you need to revise your deck. You need to look at what you're doing differently with the Salamanders, because you can't take the same tactic, same mentality that you can play Sons of Horus and World Eaters and Emperor's Children and make it apply to the Salamanders. It doesn't work. You've got to change your mind. So, anyways, that's it for me. That is the Salamanders. Oh, hey, free open, great. Don't mind if I do. Speaking of the Salamanders, well, look at that. I hope I can turn you to the cause of righteousness. Play the Salamanders. Enjoy them. Love them. They are good guys. They are good guys. Anyways, that's it for me. Keep playing Legions, guys, and we'll talk to you next time. All right, bye.